Hello everyone, welcome to another NASCAR Thunder 2004 modding video. This is the finalized, in my opinion, Vanilla Plus pack for 2003. This has many new features versus the last Vanilla Plus pack, and you should be able to continue your previous save, though you may see a couple of the lesser known drivers, or not lesser known, but the later in career mode drivers changed. There are some slots that we had to use, some extra ones we had to use, so some driver names may change from those if you're using an existing save. However, if you're using a brand new save, this is no problem. I cannot stress enough how huge this pack and this update is. So much help from so many people on the Discord, a lot of people with different paint schemes, Off-Zero, Flynn, Ty Thunder, Bushwhacker, Hunter Racing. I'm sure there's more. I feel like there's already more. Gamboa was part of it. I have to thank all you guys for all the help with the paints and everything, because I'm working on the early 90s first, and I'm working my way up to now, but at the same time this Vanilla Plus thing has me super excited. This is just kind of the core game overhaul in every way is great. Also, Mosby painted some of the cars for the futures drivers, the drivers that should come in later in the career mode. He's another one that's been working on this stuff. Yeah, there's 77 drivers from 2003 in this pack. There are 102 drivers total. There are 202 paint schemes. Actually, there's technically more than that with drivers that swapped rides, but there's 202 per unique car number, essentially. Yeah, it's pretty crazy how many paints we have in this thing, and I found a way to get them to load in the tool to where, or not to load in the tool, to load in the game where we can swap them with the tool. And new features on the tool that are here, just to summarize, to entice you to watch the whole video. There's pylon support in the regular tool for Vanilla Plus. There's a paint scheme randomizer and selector for the Vanilla Plus only for now. Also, for all the packs and Vanilla Plus, there's a package sponsor randomizer and selector for career mode. When you get a package sponsor offer, you can randomize and select or select a specific driver to get an offer from a specific car. Player paint scheme randomizer and selector for season mode. So now if you want to incorporate your own car and be able to change paints without having to rerun the tool and restart the emulator and run through the steps, you can do that a lot more easily and quickly than previously. Now career mode, you still have to manually swap a lot of things out because of the way the career mode paints are generated, but for season mode you can use the tool and it'll swap things out pretty easily. If you're new to using any of our mod stuff, if you've not used any of the Thunder 04 mod tools before, any of the mod packs or anything Vanilla Plus, any of that, then I'm going to point you to our website. There's a link in the description. And the setup page specifically. I'm going to link specifically this page because the initial files you need, like the special build for PCSX2, is required. The mod master tool is not required for Vanilla Plus. However, if you want the advanced features like the pylon and being able to swap paints without having to use the cheats, which we'll get into a little later, then anything later in the video that I'm showing the mod master tool, you'll need it for that specifically. This also already assumes that you have the ISO for Thunder and the BIOS file for the PCSX2 and can set all that up. I don't explain how to set those up, but the PCSX2 settings for widescreen, for the graphics, for game-specific settings for Thunder 04, and the mod tool setup. Now, this mod tool setup, you don't really need much of this. Again, unless you're going to use the mod tool itself, you don't really need any of this. But even some of these steps are not necessarily required for the Vanilla Plus pack, but I do recommend you just go through them and set them up. And that's it right down here. Now the mod tool usage page, if you're going to use any other pack besides Vanilla Plus, this page is going to be your bread and butter for learning. But as far as the current version of the tool goes and the Vanilla Plus pack itself, if you're just using Vanilla Plus pack, really you're only going to need a couple of things that I cover later in this video. I think the only thing helpful here might be the player tab, because the player tab on the mod tool usage page, that coverage is important if you're going to use a custom player for season mode. The only thing that you can disregard is this applying player items for season mode. That's for the normal packs. There's a new button that I will cover that's right about here. You can't see it in this, but there's a new button I'll cover later in the video, and a couple of new features of the player tab that I'll cover as well. So just check that out later and you'll be good to go. I'm probably going to do a separate video covering all of the paint schemes in the game, but I'm not going to do that one here. I don't want to make this one any longer than it already is, so look for that upload if you want to see all of the paint schemes that are in the game. Obviously that video is going to have spoilers if you don't want to see some of the drivers that come in later in the career mode and you just kind of want to jump right into career mode and play and let ththings happen without knowing what's coming. Then it's probably a little more fun that way. But if you want to see the paint schemes, if you don't mind the spoilers, if you want that stuff, there's going to be a separate video just for that specifically. So installing the NTO4 pack will be the same as previously, but I'm going to go over it real quick. Now, if you want to use the mod tool, there's going to be an extra folder of files here that'll be, say mod master files. However, just the Vanilla Plus pack by itself, you just need to go to Textures and then SLUS-20824 and then down to Replacements. And this NTO4 pack folder, if you have one already from the mod tool, just go ahead and delete it and then just drop this new NTO4 pack folder in here, and that will include all of the files you need to have the mod pack active. The other thing you have to do in this PCSX2 folder, which by the way should be in your documents, you can check via the emulator settings to see in the folder options to see where this stuff is if you need help. But just the cheats folder, you're going to drop this pnatch file right here, and that's it. This pnatch file and this NTO4 pack folder are the only two things you need to get started with the Vanilla Plus pack. Also, obviously, you should have the special build of the PCSX2 that lets all of these mods work. That's all linked down in the description below if you don't already have it. But that's pretty much it. So there's a few things different in this iteration. One, you'll notice that there's a bunch of checkboxes here for cheats, and I'll show you guys how this works once we get into the game. So as per usual, you want to disable cheats till the game has loaded, and once it says press start, then you can go ahead and enable them and then load into the game. Now the difference is the very first time that you play Vanilla Plus and any time thereafter, you can run this, but make sure that this is checked the first time you load in. But once you save a career or a season, you shouldn't need this checked anymore. However, I do recommend at least till you load into it to maybe leave it checked. But if you want driver ratings to actually change over time in career mode dynamically like they do in the base game, then you'll want to disable this for further reloads and further plays. But on initial loading of the game, and once you get to this menu, you'll want to check it. The optional stuff, 60 FPS patch is a checkbox, whether you want that or not. The AI having lower defense, higher rec frequency, lower aggression, higher mistakes, lower pitch strategy, that's all here as it was previously in Vanilla Plus. The big difference, however, is your entry list and your race paints. Now, the entry list, you should leave this checked for season unless you're trying to get the roster of a specific race locked in. And the way it works is it'll be if we have them up to 43 drivers from the actual real race, and including people who DNQ'd. And basically the way it works is it locks people in based on their number of starts from the entire year, plus Jerry Nadeau, because this pack is mostly as if he didn't get injured. But I'll explain a little more about that in a bit. But first, I'm going to go to Mark Martin for this example because I feel like he's got a couple different paints here. But the race paints, so in the game, while he has left and right, like he has more options here, we are not going to change those selections. I'm not doing alternate paints there because, again, that's limited. You can't really change that without changing a bunch of stuff in the memory, and it's kind of a pain. So I leave that to where the paint scheme's on every car. Also, I've noticed with the cheats on that it doesn't seem to randomize which car they pick between their paint schemes. On like the base game, it just doesn't seem to work the way you'd expect. So to work around that, what I have is the race paints checkboxes for different events. So what you do is you uncheck the one for season, and you can play the game just fine as is after that. It won't hurt anything, but you can check what race you want them to run a specific paint from. So in the shootout at Daytona, Mark Martin ran the craft car. Now the thing is, when you change this cheat, you have to actually like get off of and then go back to that car to see the change happen. However, if you're about to load into a race, you can just make this change. So race paints for the All-Star race, whether you choose the Open or the All-Star, these options are the same. I might just eliminate the one, but it's his inside-out paint. For the shootout, it was that craft car. For the Daytona 500, it was the regular Viagra car. And that happens to everybody, every single person in the roster. If we have their paint available, I guess we don't have Junior's All-Star, or he didn't do anything different. But if we had that paint available and I'm aware of it, then we will have it in the mod tool. So Matt Kenseth, this one isn't actually redone in high res yet. Nobody's redone the $1 Million Challenge yet, but he ran that one in the shootout at Daytona, so that's his car for that. I think Ward Burton had an alternate paint for the shootout as well versus the regular season paint. So that's how you switch between races for the paints. Do note that also affects if a driver changed rides. So a good example of someone who changed cars multiple times throughout the season. Again, I personally am going to probably end up running just the race paints, or maybe just the initial year I'll run the mix. At the end of your season or the end of your career year, each year, I recommend switching back to race paints and entry list season, just for the new season driver changes and stuff like that. Otherwise, you may end up with some weird changes that do or don't happen. But Andretti changed paints a lot, and also if they weren't in the event, it'll just use their default paint. But a good example, Andretti later in the season, one that we do have, he ran the 90 car at Talladega, or the AOL 9.0 car. Now, I had to get rid of the dot in the name just because of how the names work and stuff, but regardless, you can see this is a Chevy, not the Dodge he was running. You can see his car number 90. Now, this icon I can't change on the fly. That, unfortunately, is going to have to stay the same. Same with the one when you're on track and you see the running order. That's going to have to stay the same, unfortunately. There isn't a good way to change that on the fly because there's a very limited number of how many number icons there are. Whereas the way I'm actually able to change the cars is because there's actually about like 300 and something different paint schemes in memory in the game. So the way I set this up, essentially, just to peel the curtain back a bit, is I'm changing what car texture ID is being used by each driver with each of the race paint options here. And just for reference, the entry list really only affects who's full-time, part-time, and so on. Now, it might not look exactly as you would think. If you have 43 drivers, the way it works is it's actually setting some of them to a new setting that is, I don't want to call it I don't want to call it part-time. It's kind of, they're still listed as full-time drivers, but they have a chance of DNQing. It's basically your locked-in drivers versus your not locked in. And you can't visually see that on this selection screen. You can only visually see when people are the part-time Busch Series. But this is actually going to change when I release this. Essentially, everybody who made a minimum number of starts will at least be listed as full-time one way or another. So a good example, just for the sake of this. Now, I'm going to change this for the final release, so Nadeau's included in all the races. That'll be done in the future. But currently, if you do the entry list for a race where Nadeau didn't run, you'll see him as Busch Series. And if I go ahead and change it to an entry list early in the season, you see he immediately changed to full-time once I switched through the menu somewhere. So that is all fixed so that the people show up when they should. Other ones like the Zero car, for example, I have Ward Burton switching to that really late season. I believe he should still... Oh, I got to change to the paints for that one. Nope, that's the Charlotte night race. How about Phoenix? Yeah, so Phoenix, Ward Burton will be in the 0. Again, this number icon will not update. Fortunately, like I said, there isn't a good way to do that live with live data. We can do that with the tool really easily, but with the live data, it's a lot. It's impossible from what I've seen. I shouldn't say impossible, but when the 0 exists up here, technically I could do some data swap to get that icon to show up in the correct place, but it's a little bit complicated to set up, and I didn't think it was too big of a deal to leave their original numbers there, so this is going to be as is for you guys. But again, this stuff, the race paints and the entry list especially, race paints, I mean, I guess both. I don't recommend using them beyond your first year of career or season mode. And when you get to that end of that season, you want to switch to the season entry list and race paints, and then just shut off the vanilla load options. Or make sure they're off. They should already have been off by the time you get to the end of your career, but yeah. And then you should have driver retirements and other items work as per usual for this stuff here. And you'll have fun replacements and so on. A couple of things that are important to note. You should uncheck this initial Vanilla Plus load when you get to the end of a season. You do not want this checked when you start a new year. You don't really want this checked when you're loading into a career either. You want this unchecked. Part of that is the driver changing at the end of the season, people retiring, replacing, all that sort of thing. That's what it affects. So you want to make sure that's unchecked. Another new feature I want to show of the Mod Master tool. This isn't required to play Vanilla Plus, but if you want more control and you feel comfortable using the Mod Master tool, then you can go ahead and install the extra couple pieces, which I just showed you where to put. And then you can go ahead and load Core Pack for Vanilla Plus, 2003 Vanilla Plus. You should have a lot less options than I do. Hit Load Core Pack, go to Finalize. You don't have to click anything else, just go to Finalize after that. Wait for it to load. Now under Live Tools, you can use the scoring pylon when you're at the track. So that'll work with this pack. You can do any of these live tools will still work with this pack. Now there's a couple of extra options. One of these options will work with any pack, which is the package sponsors. And you can either randomize or you can go ahead and select from the drop down who you want a package sponsor offer from that exists in the current pack. All you have to do is select it or randomize and then go ahead and hit apply selection. And in career mode, if you have a package sponsor offer, this will give you the new, whatever you select here, hit apply, that'll be the offer you have in career mode. So if you want to manually pick, you want to end up in somebody's ride specifically, or you think maybe you just want to randomize it in general, then you'll want to use this option here. I do recommend randomizing once. When you load into an existing save, you should randomize once, because there may be an offer that comes in from the game that doesn't exist in the pack or might not be used in the pack. So so you don't get stuck with something that is part of the core game. You could go ahead and hit randomize and get a new one and hit apply. Another new feature is this vanilla paints option. This should only show up with the vanilla pack. This will eventually be added to all of the packs to give you guys more control of what paints show up in the game at different times. You'll want to go ahead and disable, if you have any of the race paints checked for events or for the season, you want to uncheck those in the cheats for this option to work. That's why this is optional. This is something extra. Now, the one difference between the race paints in here and the ones that randomize is I kept the options limited to just that driver's default paint scheme's car number. So, for example, Christian Fittipaldi, who has, oh man, these are not in any nice order. I'll have to change that. So Christian Fittipaldi, he only has one paint scheme. He only has the default because the number 44 only has one paint scheme. While in the cheat options, he actually has more than one paint scheme option, which is not just the 44, but also the 43 car for certain races and stuff like that. So I lock it down to just that primary car number, and you can go ahead and select a specific paint for a specific driver. And all you have to do is go ahead and click. You can randomize if you want them completely random. And I say completely, it is controlled within the randomization settings of the CSV files behind the scenes. So essentially what that means is some of the driver's schemes that they didn't run often, like the victory lap scheme only made one race, I put that at a very low percentage chance of randomizing for all the drivers that have it. But it is possible. But once you hit randomize or select one, so I'm just going to put Hulk on Bobby Labonte here just to show it. You hit apply to game, and then when I select a different paint in the game or switch drivers, it'll go ahead and update immediately to that other paint scheme. Works very similar to checking that box in the cheats. However, this is for further randomization, so when you get to later years in the career, or if you pick up a ride, a package sponsor with a certain car, and you want to run alternate paints on it, you can totally do that. Also, with the sponsor, the package sponsor, when you randomize, if you randomize on this screen specifically, you might not see the name change, the name offer change. So it might, while it changed the Viagra down here, the name didn't change at the top. If I switch away and back, it should say Pfizer. I just want to add that changing your paint scheme does work in career mode as well once you have a package sponsor. The only thing is it's best to go into and out of the paint scheme screen to actually get it to apply in the menus. It weirdly doesn't reload in the menus if I change it to the default, or just back to, change the blue ice. You'll see if I go to team management and sponsorship, it's still showing as the Sharpie paint. And even coming back out, it still does. But once you go to the paint scheme screen, or I think to the track, it'll change to the correct scheme, because I think that's when it reloads it. So you have that control now for your career paint scheme as well if you get a package sponsor, and you can use that in tandem with the package sponsors here. One of the new features with the mod tool involves the player paints. And you'll want to go ahead and hit the drop down here for Load Core Pack, click on Vanilla Plus for 2003, hit Load Core Pack, then go right up to Finalize. Don't worry about anything else. Now when you're on the Finalize section, if you click Finalize tab, I don't want you to generate these. This step that you normally do for regular packs, I don't want you to ever do that for Vanilla Plus. There's only two things you're going to be messing with here: the player tab and the live tools. Now the player tab, when you first get here, go ahead and hit generate player paints, and I want you to do this before the game's actually open. Then go ahead to the live tools and fire up your game. Make sure to shut off your cheats on the loading screen and enable the initial Vanilla Plus load when you re-enable the cheats. Once you hit press start, you enable cheats, and you go ahead and initial Vanilla Plus load, leave that on. Get in the game. then go ahead and uncheck that initial load. You should still see the correct roster and paints and everything else. But what we're going to do now, I'm going to show off one of the new features. So on the live tools, there's this Vanilla Paints button that you'll only see when you're in a Vanilla Plus pack. And I went over this already with the paint schemes for the other drivers. However, what I didn't go over, and make sure you uncheck race paints, by the way, on right here. You want to uncheck that. What I did not go over, however, is this section over here. So player season car. And what that means is if you're going to play season mode or race now mode, you can run your custom paints from the player tab. So you just hit the checkbox for player car active and you select which paint you want to run, or you can randomize and then hit apply selections. And I have to hop out of and back into this menu, and you should see, not in here. You might have to hunt around a little bit. Placement can be a little funky, but there's my custom car. Now, just like the other cars, if you notice this one has Valvoline on the hood, I have another paint scheme, and I can hit apply selections, and if I switch off and then back on that car, you'll notice that now it's True Values on the hood. It's an alternate version of my paint. So you can swap between the paints that you have on the player tab, these different options. You can swap between them now live in the game just by selecting the one you want, hitting apply selections, and then swapping away from that car or loading into a track or anything like that, and it should show the new paint. So very simple, straightforward. It's pretty much the same or similar code to the vanilla paints. And if you don't want your car active anymore, because they will race on the track if you don't select them. You can see now it's not selectable. Once I left that driver select screen, it's no longer listed where it was. So they won't be on track if you uncheck that. The other thing is all of the driver info is based on this tab, and if you change something, so I know normally you use this bullet here for applying it to the season mode. That's the old method. That's the way we used to do it. You're not going to necessarily need to do that anymore. I do have to test on whether that works for the other packs, but at least for Vanilla Plus, it doesn't matter what you have selected here. You just go ahead and you hit that generate, like I said, before the game's fired up. And any info you have here, when you hit the live tool and you hit apply, it applies that info. So just to show you, if I go player car active and I hit apply, and when I load back in, there's me. But if I go ahead to the player tab and I change my name to Joe Jabip and change my number to 777, or any of this other stuff, your town, your team name, whether you're full-time, part-time, just go ahead and hit apply selections, and when I select around, you see now I'm Joe Jabip with the 777, part-time, all that stuff. So everything on the player tab can get live updated with this apply button. Again, this is probably only a Vanilla Plus feature as of the release of this video. However, I will be doing an update to the tool and to a couple of packs to where you can have this functionality and the paint functionality for all of the packs. But right now, this is only a Vanilla Plus feature, and this option will only show up when you are in a Vanilla Plus pack. That's going to do it for this Vanilla Plus update video. If you guys are new here, please join the Discord. If there's any further updates to paint schemes, there might be in the future. No promises on that for this particular pack. We got a pretty darn complete roster for 2003, including drivers who DNQ'd for races and didn't even make a race. So this is about as complete as it gets, but if anything's added to it, the Discord would be the place to find out. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy this update. And if you guys are content creators, you stream, you make YouTube videos or anything like that, please join the Discord. There is a channel for sharing your own stuff, but only we're trying to keep the video links to just content that has to do with Thunder 04 and modding and other EA modding games and things like that. So if you need a place to share that stuff, if you want to maybe expand your audience a little bit, you could join the Discord and hang out and say hello to everyone and share your content there. So please do join the Discord regardless. If you want some help, if you want some updates, if you want to learn about the other packs, there's a lot of stuff there. But that's going to do it for this video. I appreciate all you guys. I appreciate everyone's help with this pack that helped with paints and finding decals and anything else. And all the people who are working on other packs as well. And thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoy the heck out of this update to Thunder 04. I feel like this is really as complete as the core game can get without adding all the other packs that we're working on. But with just the core experience game in career mode, with drivers retiring and changing rides and paint schemes and all that, I think this is as complete as it can get without getting our hands on some old source code, which ain't gonna happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks everyone. See you later.